This basically is in your book, but it's kind of scattered. And so I just change it to call this chapter X. And we'll just do perfect squares. Okay, and so we are actually going to want to write some stuff down and then memorize it. So we're going to start with our perfect squares here. So we got 1, 4, 9. What's next, do we think? Anybody know? This is kind of a pattern, sure. 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121. What do we think's next? 144. $196. What's next? $225. And we're just going to go this far. Okay. These are important numbers. These are important numbers just to kind of remember and actually to memorize if you don't have them already. And you should already have memorized in the 3rd grade all the way up to 144. Right? So for our purposes, the reason why we're writing this down is so we know what our perfect squares are. Because we're going to have problems where we're going to have to do this. The square root of 1 is, well, it's 1. That's boring. What's the square root of 4? Okay, because the square root is opposite of squared. So this is the opposite operation of exponents. And so what I mean by the square root of 4, it means 2 times 2 is 4, right? 2 squared would be 4, so the square root is 2. What's the square root of 9? You should start seeing a pattern here. What's the square root of 16? 4 times 4 is 16. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay. What's this one? What's this one? Okay. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern. Because I just went in order, didn't I? So 7, 8, 121, 144, 1. And so really the only new ones to you guys are 13, 14, and you can't see them all. Or 13, 14, and 16. So make sure you have these written down because we see these numbers a lot when you're dealing with square roots. Of course, the square root, the number is going to start big, but it's going to get small. So we've got to get used to that. And we're going to do a little bit of work with this. Okay. And this is where we're going to kind of get into maybe a gap where you didn't do maybe as much work as you were supposed to in the 8th grade. And so we're going to make sure that we work and go slowly with this to make sure you know how to do things. One of the things you're supposed to do that you may not have gotten to do is if you take a number like this. Square root of 8. Is that a perfect square? It's definitely not a perfect square. Square root of 8 would be somewhere in between square root of 4 and square root of 9, right? So the answer would be somewhere between 2 and 3. Okay, do you guys remember doing something like that? Where we're kind of estimating what the answer should be. Of course, you can put it in your calculator and get the right answer, but we're going to learn how to do this, what we're about to do, without a calculator. Okay, so that's what we want to identify. So what I want you to be able to do, now that we have our perfect squares, is I want you to be able to simplify square roots or simplify radicals. Okay, and we're going to do this without a calculator, and then I'll teach you how to do it with a calculator. Obviously, it's way easier with a calculator, but it's not too hard without one. And so instead of doing square root of 8 is between 2 and 3, we're going to learn how to break it down. And so the steps are pretty simple. We're going to do basically a tree. Does anybody remember doing factor trees? Yeah. We're basically going to do a factor trees. So basically what we're going to do is a factor tree with perfect squares. So not every factor, just perfect. Okay? Just perfect squares is what I want to use. Okay? So I'm going to look at all my perfect squares, and that's why I have a list, because if I don't have them memorized, it's nice to have a list. What perfect square can I divide 8 by? I can divide it by 4, right? So this is what I do. 8 divided by 4 is going to be what? 4 times 2 is 8, right? What's the square root of 4? Do I know what the square root of 2 is? Is it one of my perfect squares? This is how you simplify a radical. Okay, and this is what we're going to work on just a little bit today, and we're going to work on it big time tomorrow. Okay, so today we're just going to do notes because you took a test, and I don't want to give you homework on test day. And some of you probably need to try to beat me and get pictures into the Google Classroom, so I think that you did all your work. So I'm probably around Fridays when I'm going to start putting those grades in, so that gives you an opportunity to maybe get some late work in that you didn't do. All right, so I'm going to move on. We're going to try some more. Let's make something a little harder here. Square root of 27. So again, I'm going to look at which one of these numbers can I divide 27 by. Okay, I'm not even going to try, numbers like 81. I can't divide 27 by 81. That doesn't help. So I'm going to try numbers down here, small ones. Nine, right? 9 times what is 27? All right. What is the square root of 9? And I can't divide 3 by anything right here, can I? I can divide it by 1, but does that help me ever? Okay, there we go. It's simplified. Okay. Let's try this one. Okay. I can't divide it by 4. Can't really divide it by 9. How about 25? Square root of 25 is? Okay, when we simplify these, could we turn this into some kind of decimal if we wanted to? I'll show you how to do that. That's not exact, that's rounded. We're worried about getting exact answers. Because when you do math for real in the real world, you leave the answers exact for the entire problem until the very, very, very end. And that's the only time you round. Because accuracy matters, you know, and it depends. If you're building a table, if it's a little off, just use a hammer and fix it, right? You just hit it a little harder. But if you're building a rocket, accuracy probably matters, right? If you're a little bit off and just a little bit of gas leaks, it's no big deal, right? It just makes a really, really, you know, huge $10 billion explosion, right? Which would be exciting unless you're actually in the rocket. Then it's less exciting and a little bit more painful. All right, let's try to see if you can simplify this one. Okay, and don't let me trick you on this one. What's the answer? This is a perfect square, right? So it's just 11. It's on my list. Okay? So that's what we're getting into. I'm going to shut this off.